Have you ever wondered why that shoulder that you thought you fixed just keeps coming back? Or why your stomach chooses the worst possible moments to freak out? Like right before a work presentation, or maybe before you're about to have some private time?
Or the headache that shows up right when you need to focus. Or the brain fog that rolls in just before a big meeting.
The list goes on. Muscle pain, especially in your back, shoulders, and neck. Sudden waves of anxiety, IBS, mood swings, fatigue, insomnia, high blood pressure, dizziness.
All right, that's enough of the greatest hits.
Okay. The point is, it's not just aging, it's not just something that you ate, and it's definitely not all in your head. It's your body talking to you, and it has a lot of opinions.
We're here to help you interpret those messages, and over time, loosen the grip those symptoms have on your life. We'll bring together the latest in neuroscience and what we've learned firsthand about the mind-body connection to help you understand it better and what you can actually do to change it.
Hi, I'm Abraham, a tech entrepreneur and someone who had to learn the hard way that my body has opinions through quite a bad burnout.
And I'm Atena. I have a PhD in neuroscience and I'm a somatic coach, which basically means that I do this professionally.
Now here's where you come in.
Record a voice note on your phone, nothing fancy, and tell us about the symptoms and life situations you're curious about.
Then upload it through the link in our bio. You can keep it anonymous if you want.
And every 2 weeks, we'll share a new episode and help you decode the opinions your body seems determined to share.
Because you're not weird.
You're not too sensitive.
Your body has opinions.
Everybody's does.
And you don't have to figure them out alone. Welcome to Your Body Has Opinions, the mind-body advice podcast where we demystify and destigmatize those often weird signals that your body is sending you. We'll be taking your questions and helping you to understand those opinions your body seems determined to share.
Plus, we'll share with you insights into and discussions about the latest mind-body science. But today is episode 0. It's the first episode, and we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to help you to get to know us a bit, our stories, and why we're doing this podcast in the first place.
So let's get started. All right, the first question is an easy one. For the record, what is your name, age, and where do you live?
So I'm Atena. I'm 33 years old, and I live in Berlin.
I am Abraham. I am 37 years old, and I also live in Berlin.
So I'll take the first question for you to answer.
Okay.
When did the penny drop for you that your nervous system had something to do with your experience of chronic symptoms?
So I had been through quite a bit of a roller coaster in trying to understand what was actually going on with me that went on for like years. There was this progressive buildup that happened from a bunch of stress points in my life, which I now know is a very common thing. Mm-hmm. And then my symptoms were just getting worse and worse, and they were all over the place. And I went to different doctors. I went to a neurologist. I went to an orthopedic doctor. I ended up referred to a chronic pain specialist, and no one could really figure out what was going on. We were now just in a place of like, treat the symptoms and deal with this as your life.
Yeah.
Which was like super depressing. And the one person that was really, really kind of more human about it with me was my chiropractor. And after some weird stuff that happened with her, with some of her treatments, she put me on to like the first cookie or breadcrumb on the trail to Dr. John Sarno's work, which basically he's kind of like a godfather or forefather in this world a little out of date now, but really started looking at this in like the 1980s and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And from there, I started to understand that what I was really experiencing was not necessarily physical symptoms with a physical cause, but that all of this was coming from repressed emotions. But I didn't actually believe it. I really didn't totally believe it. And I was trying to convince myself out of that. But we are so driven to understand based off of how we're set up in our society that if there is a physiological symptom, then there must be a physiological cause. Like, that's just the entire way that Western medicine is set up. And so I didn't believe him totally, or I was trying to. And we had a friend come over, and he just triggered a bunch of my insecurities all at once. And I was actually having a pretty good day. I was using CBD oil to like calm my system down. And suddenly, like, boom, he said something, and my shoulder, my ankle, and my anxiety all went off at the same time. And that's when I was going, oh, well, maybe this is mind body. Maybe this is more in my head than I think it is.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you just said there, because I think that like we all have these moments where there's like a penny drop, right? And I think for me, it came kind of quite late in my journey. I had already been struggling with, different mind body things on and off, not like all the time, since childhood. And basically what changed was that I then had a back injury also. And I've been living with chronic pain, quite debilitating chronic pain, and kind of like you going from doctor to doctor and just thinking that, my back was totally broken or that there was something really, really wrong with me. And I've been living with that for about a year at that point. There was like a severe escalation. This was in the pandemic. I had a lot of big life stresses happen at once. But actually kind of one of the biggest things that was going on was that I made a decision, a big professional decision, which I knew was going against myself. What I wanted was to go into that direction, but I decided to double down and go a different direction. And at the same time, there was a lot of like relational things going on, like I'd been told that my grandmother was dying, even though that actually didn't happen for some more years, thankfully. It was like you said, like a period of high stress. And suddenly I started developing all of these symptoms. And I'd already actually known a little bit about the pain neuroscience in that year of chronic pain. But like you, I was starting to explore it, but it didn't fully click for me.
Yeah.
And it actually took like a proper escalation of symptoms for me to realize, okay, no, this is something more. And I think what helped was that I was a neuroscientist and that I could actually, because of my knowledge, know that all of my symptoms that had been escalating were neurological. Like I was getting blurry vision. I was getting weird sensory things. I was getting, severe vestibular issues, and all of those things together. I was like
dizziness.
Yeah, like dizziness and just disorientation. And I knew it was neurological. And when I landed in hospital, because that's how bad it got, I was like, I need to see a neurologist because, this is neurological. And I had no idea what it was. But once they kind of saw me and tested me for like the worst sort of stuff, they were like, your actual pathways are fine. I just sort of knew intuitively that it was something about me pushing my system too far, or my system having been pushed too far. And I just, had this penny drop moment. Like there is something here that has really like distressed your nervous system. And that was kind of confirmed to me because I had a chronic pain consult not long afterwards. And then I'd had this escalation of symptoms. And it was probably some of the best advice I'd actually ever gotten from a doctor. He sort of said, it looks like you've got all of the signals of a nervous system in distress.
That's clear and nice.
Yeah.
It's funny, all of the doctors that I went to that, like the orthopedic specialist, I went to two different neurologists, the chronic pain specialist. They didn't give me that insight. The one doctor who did is a friend of mine who basically said, I think that all of this is just stress.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had that voice at the back of my head, but it was the only person that did that was my friend.
Yeah.
Who was kind of not acting as my doctor.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, okay. Next question. How did your personal healing process unfold?
So for me, I really needed to reach like rock bottom for me to start listening in a bit differently and to change approach, which before was, like I said, kind of just like going from doctor to doctor. And I mean, I still continue to do more of that and I needed to, but yeah, I essentially had that, very debilitating escalation of symptoms. And I was actually bedbound for a year. There was improvement in that year, I will also say. But I think, being in a state of, disability and really, really, really minimal capacity as someone who is very, very, ambitious and driven, gave me a lot of time to think. I decided pretty quick that wasn't going to be the end of me and that there must be more. And again, this is where like my training did help because I actually researched neuroplasticity in brain development. So I knew that neuroplasticity is a thing and that brains can change.
Which is the cool part about all of this. And I think what was really helpful for me, which is why I want to point it out, is that neuroscience, and we'll talk lots about neuroscience on the podcast, is kind of this final point of being able to understand from a Western medical sense how the mind and the body connect.
Yes, absolutely.
Because like before it was psychology, physiology separated, and now neuroscience helps us through the nervous system to understand that connection. And that's like the Rosetta Stone of it.
100%. But even as a neuroscientist, it took a while for me to actually really be fully on board, because that kind of, conditioning that like the mind and body are separate runs really deep, and it runs, not just through medicine, but like all of society, the way people relate to things.
Totally.
So yeah, I think the training did help for me to like take the veil away a bit more quickly. And I kind of sought out stories of recovery and healing, not just for the conditions I had, but, kind of wider conditions. And yeah, I basically started after a while to kind of orient towards the nervous system and working with desensitizing and retraining my nervous system. And yeah, through a lot of different modalities, including somatics and brain retraining, but also things like hypnotherapy were really helpful, looking for who I actually am and what kind of life I actually want to lead. So that's the kind of maybe bigger topic that we can also get into later. But I needed the support of different skilled practitioners in these areas and people who'd already gone through something like that. And those people exist. And I think over time, I quite quickly came out of a bedbound state and then kind of continued to chip away at it after that. But I will say that it was a very non-linear journey. Yeah, lots of learnings on the way. How was it for you?
Similar. I mean, I think that this is common for many people. If I look at it from a macro perspective, and I am an engineer, so I think in these ways, I think in graphs and images and things like that. It was sort of like the reverse stock market was the path down, where I had like it just ups and downs, but I was getting slowly to this very low point in my life. And similar thing around COVID time, which is a whole separate topic on its own, like how COVID impacts so many people with their mental health. But I had all of these factors of stress happening simultaneously, multiplied by the fact that I am a huge overachiever or recovering overachiever and people pleaser. And so basically those things all came together at the same time. And then my symptom escalation just kind of got worse and worse. And then suddenly I was dealing with so many different things simultaneously, from problems with my eyes, my teeth, my jaw, my ankle, my wrist, my hips, like IBS, brain fog, anxiety, depression, insomnia, like the list just goes on and on and on. And so I got to a point where I said, like, screw it. I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not just going to accept that this is what my life looks like. And from my personal side, I come from, there are mind-body symptoms in my family. There's chronic pain stuff in the past in my family. And you see this clearly once you kind of have your eyes opened a little bit, how it's happened. And so I was like, I'm not going down that path. And I quit my job, which I had a lot of privilege to be able to do that in the first place. But I quit my job, and then I went on a journey trying to find answers. And I at first looked into, I had done a lot of yoga in the past, so I kind of returned to that. I started exploring Qigong, meditation, journaling, but like all of the things that I could put together, I was only able to get to a point where my symptoms somewhat stabilized. I wasn't getting better. I was just, so I'd gone like this stock market down. It wasn't continuing to go down. It was now level.
More level. Yeah.
And it felt like, oh, I think I'm making progress. And then I step back. And then I think I'm making progress. And then I step back again. And I tried this new thing, and I even had a somatic coach at one point in time, but she wasn't that great and that helpful. And then I found a program which basically put it all together, the different practices, the neuroscience of what was going on. And then suddenly I understood. Oh, and I should probably say I'd been in therapy at like 4 years at this point in time. So it wasn't like I wasn't doing therapy.
Yeah.
But it was all up here. It was all in my brain.
Yeah.
It was all in my thinking brain. It was not in my body. It was not in understanding how my nervous system functions. And that is actually how Atena and I met.
Because that is true.
Atena was a coach in this program that I did. And then funny enough, we
live around the corner from each other.
Exactly. So, and then suddenly that context plus not feeling so alone in it, like having people to talk to that had gone through this as well and could kind of, I mean, there's no clear map of this is exactly what your path is going to look like.
Yeah.
But at least an understanding of what the key themes look like and that I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
That, and then, I mean, it took me like, it was probably, I always had mind body symptoms my whole life.
Yeah.
Now that I look at it.
Relatable.
but like the really bad years were like 3 years of buildup. And then now I'm in like 3 years of rebuild. And I'm finally at a place where I would say I'm back to normal.
And you've worked very hard for it.
Oh yeah. But the other thing, and this is what I want to add, and this is the cool thing, and you kind of alluded to it, is that this work sucks sometimes, but it is also revelatory.
Yes.
In that you kind of like come to the work because you're in pain, because you're dealing with all of these problems. But then basically what you have to do in order to get better is to become more aligned with who you really are rather than who you think you're supposed to be. And to drop all of this like stuff that we're doing to cope with the world that we learn from a young age. And that is super cool because then suddenly you're on this path and you feel so much lighter. And I'm at this tipping point now where life is becoming so much easier.
Yeah.
And I carry so much less weight than I ever have in my entire life. And my symptoms are almost non-existent.
Yeah.
So the sky is now kind of the limit.
Yeah, 100%. And I fully relate to that. Like, I think for me, what was so interesting and what I was saying to people at the time was that even as I still had symptoms, my life was actually so much better even during recovery than it had been before.
Yeah.
So even though in a way, like I had been more physically well, and I'm really putting that, in apostrophes because that's a very nuanced topic in itself. I hadn't been fully in alignment with myself. And I think that is...
Which, by the way, sounds like the most like cheesy yoga-y kind of new age thing to say. But I promise you there is no better way to say it than that. And maybe over time after listening, you'll understand why we mean that.
Yeah, I think it will all make more sense. Yeah. But I guess I want to say that like it made me live a life that is more true to my strengths and desires. Let's put it that way.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree with that.
How did a science-backed understanding help you understand your experience of symptoms?
Okay. Yeah. This was key for me. I'm an engineer by training. I work in tech. I appreciate problem solving and being able to understand how things fit together. That's one part of it. So I think just being able to understand how what was going on through my psychology was impacting my physiology, that was huge. It was no longer guesswork. It wasn't like this is just Eastern practices. I could understand why meditation or visualization or breath work or these things were actually having an impact on how my nervous system, how my brain was set up and functioned, how it was programmed. For me, it was like I have this black box of this operating system, and we all do, that's been built mostly through osmosis and then like from our parents. And then we take that and our life experiences impact it and we don't know how it functions. And so this whole process was to kind of learn how that functions and to open it up and it not be a black box anymore, that I could rewire it, that I could bit by bit, layer by layer, change it. Yeah. So science was incredibly important for me to be able to understand how I'm actually doing that.
Yeah. That makes total sense. And I think, I share a similar sentiment. Like for me, obviously, I was already very passionate about the nervous system, and I was looking at it from a different angle and interacting with it in a very different way. But there was a sense of curiosity as I was going through this experience of like, I'm a neuroscientist who's currently a neurological patient, basically. And this is weird and interesting, while it is also kind of horrendous. But, you know, my kind of science literacy did pave the way for me to understand a lot more what is happening beneath the surface. And it gave me a lot of routes for recovery as well. What I will say is that there was a slight edge to that as well. And it's one that I've also noticed from working with other people who are scientists. Some have actually been neuroscientists also, which is that sometimes when you are in the process of recovery, you can also know too much. And if your brain has a bias towards looking at all the things that can go wrong, as a scientist, when you understand that, it can also really make you feel super fearful. So there, I think, have been moments of needing to zoom out a little bit more and just be with my experience. Not like putting the science to the side totally, but yeah, to not get so wrapped up in all the details and just be a person for a bit. So a balance.
I very much agree with that. My problem solving brain was probably one of my biggest strengths through this process, while at the same time, one of my biggest weaknesses, because I could get and I only just recently realized how I use like analysis and problem solving and bias towards action to basically prevent myself from feeling emotions. It's like, if I can figure it out and if I can fix this problem, well, then I don't have to feel the bad emotion because I've taken action to avoid it.
Yeah.
And I've just that's a realization from 2 weeks ago. So
we're still on a path, I guess.
Yes, it's a journey. I think one of the things that I want to say, just as a brief interlude here, is that we're talking about this from we had a really bad.
Yeah.
We had it really bad. There are degrees of intensity for people experiencing mind-body symptoms, and pretty much everybody does. Everybody does to a certain extent. Headaches, IBS, brain fog, things that we just kind of write off or we connect to allergies or these types of things are very often multiplied by this mind-body thing.
Yeah.
And so you can be in a place like us where we got to points of debilitation, which is the worst case version of it. But there are degrees of intensity.
For sure.
So you don't necessarily need to be in the same place. And hopefully you aren't if you're listening right now. But if you are, you can come back from that. And if you're experiencing more lighter versions of things, well, then it's still helpful to understand where this is coming from.
I completely agree. And I think on that note, what is changing about the discourse around the mind-body connection is that more people are becoming familiar with it and addressing it earlier on. Whereas I think even a few years ago, in Western countries, people didn't have that information, and it didn't quite necessarily often get to a really, really bad place before people would consider it. And I do see that conversation shifting a little bit, which is something that we're trying to contribute to as well.
Okay, I think the next question is for you.
Yes.
What part of this work do you care more about than you expected to?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think, and this has been a theme for a while, I'm, obviously coming from a scientific background, and I apply that when I work with clients and, also have in my own recovery. But really, the thing that lights me up is for people to kind of discover more of who they are, which is something that you kind of alluded to, is for people to discover their unique gifts. And a lot of the time there have been barriers to that are connected to mind-body symptoms beforehand. So kind of living in certain patterns of pushing beyond one's own needs, or trying to behave in ways that aren't actually natural and cause a lot of internal stress. And I really love to see people kind of come into their own and develop the kind of confidence to just be who they are. And I think that on a physiological level is really paving the way for health.
It's so crazy how powerful it is to just be honest with yourself.
Yes.
Like I honest with yourself. Also, not to make everything hunky-dory and happy all the time.
For sure.
Like, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm having a hard time. And those are okay emotions to have. And it doesn't mean that you need to go and flip your life upside down. Like, sometimes you do. Sometimes you need to make some bigger changes. But a lot of it's just like, my boss is pissing me off. And that's okay that you feel pissed off.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. You don't have to go change your job because of it. But you should process the fact that you're pissed off rather than just repressing it all the time.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Anyway.
Okay, I have a question for you. What's the most inconvenient time your body has ever had an opinion?
God. Okay, this is where, like, I hope my parents aren't listening, so maybe just turn off your ears for 30 seconds. I would say that the most inconvenient time for me is before sex. Mm-hmm. That has been... Like, I would get nervous before sex, and then my entire digestive system would just go crazy because that's one of my, like, upset stomach and like IBS type stuff. And that's not sexy.
And also, like, you can see there is no such thing as TMI. On this podcast. We're all about de-shaming and destigmatizing.
Everybody poops, people. Like, I think that's going to be one of my go-to statements. Everybody poops. We're talking about it again. It is just part of the way that this goes.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your personal red flag sign that your nervous system is overloaded?
Yeah. So I think for me, I kind of get two things that can happen. One of them is that I can become very spaced out. Like, I can become a little bit detached, and it's like my body kind of saying, oh, here is some low level dissociation to protect you from.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Like, what do you mean by low level dissociation?
So it's kind of like I'm here and I'm functional, but I'm not like fully here. I'm not like fully present in the moment. And you're like foggy, or like you're outside of your body a little bit. I'm not outside of my body. I think there's like a layer between me and everything else that exists.
Yeah, I've had this in the past a little bit. It's almost like you're watching your life through a TV screen type thing. So you know that you're there, and you know that you know that you're existing in it, but everything feels like if you put a pane of glass between you and the rest of what's going on around you.
And I'm a deeply feeling person. So if I'm not feeling things intensively and I'm just feeling like a hint of something, I'm usually like, I think that something is shutting down there a little bit. The other thing that can happen is that, and this is coming from someone who was a chronic migraine sufferer. Like, I had migraines at one point for 28 days out of 30. I can still get a migraine if things really push that way. But last year, I think I had 3 all year. And so to me, that is really not bad. And they tend to be quite low level. They don't take me out too much. But yeah, that's kind of a sign that maybe something is like getting a bit much. And so usually I just need to take a bit more time to be with myself, settle my nervous system, make sure that I'm resting, look at the stresses in my life. And that's kind of it.
What's the weirdest explanation you've ever convinced yourself was definitely the cause?
Honestly, I don't know if it's weird, but just that my entire spine is completely broken, and everything that is holding my spine together is completely broken because I had so much pain in my lower back and my hip and my pelvis and everything that was kind of connected to it, sciatica. And I found out that I'm hypermobile, which is a thing.
Which basically means that you're like super flexible and like almost too flexible. So if you're doing yoga and stuff like that, you have to stop yourself from going too far.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a lot more than that, but that's what most people associate with it. And, that is a thing. And it is very, very common actually in people who develop mind body symptoms. Yeah, there's a big association there. But essentially, I was just convinced that my ligaments, my tissues could not hold together my spine. And so that my, joints were completely out of alignment, and that was causing all the pain. And I became convinced for about a year that the only thing that was going to fix me were these injections into my spine called prolotherapy, which were very expensive and quite experimental, that actually causes a bit of tissue damage so that the tissue will repair and become stronger. And so I thought that with that, it would keep all my joints in place and then I would have no more pain. And the thing is, we're looking at minute changes in positions when it comes to the spine, because I had all the scans and my scans came back fine. I stand upright every single day. There is a lot that is holding my spine together. And that was pre me learning about all of the different studies that show that there is not like a strong correlation between that kind of tissue damage and chronic pain levels. I was just really convinced that my spine was, you could put it in the bin. That's where my brain was.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that, first off, where we actually experience pain is not as logical as we think it is.
Of course.
That was one of the biggest learnings that I had from this. So I was just at my chiropractor this week, and she was saying how tight some of the muscles in my neck and my skull were, and that she's surprised I don't have headaches. But my mom has chronic migraines.
Right.
And so I think for me, I've gone, like, my nervous system knows that headaches or migraines are a representation of stress. So it can't use that as a way to basically say, I'm going to distract you from your emotions.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
So it's the one thing that I haven't had along the way.
Yeah. And I mean, the biomechanical model of pain will say that, like, oh, you have a pain here. That means that there is tissue damage at that exact location. But we know that when, especially pain sort of pushes into a chronic state, that your nervous system is interpreting signals from the body as dangerous, and therefore producing pain, sometimes in areas that are completely fine.
Often because it's trying to protect you in ways that are only describable through mind-body connection.
Absolutely.
So, like, our understanding is pain equals problem in this area.
It's, if your body could give you an unedited opinion, what would it be?
So my body is like saying something to me now, and it actually has a voice rather than all these weird signals. I would probably say that it would be something about, like, you're doing enough. Yeah, I think you're doing enough. I think a good way of describing this one as well, I recently heard, was like, if your life was a movie and the audience could be screaming at you, what would it scream?
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So I think it's kind of the same thing. Like, my life is, I'm doing enough. I don't have to do more. I just have to have patience and kind of acceptance that this is the process, and it's not boom solution. I can't just take a pill to fix this.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So I have another question for you, which is, what's your body's most dramatic reaction to stress?
Definitely probably digestive.
So common.
Yeah, like brain.
So annoying.
Yeah, brain fog happens a lot, but I wouldn't say it's the most dramatic thing, because I just get foggy.
Yeah.
But the digestion pieces, like the overreaction that will happen. Oh my God. One of the weirdest things of this whole process, I can't eat spicy food in the same way I used to be able to. Oh
no. I'm so sad for you. I can, thankfully.
Okay, well, fine.
Sorry.
But I find that if I eat stuff that's too spicy, my whole system responds to it so much more strongly, because it's in this elevated state of stress. And I mean, like, when you eat something spicy, you're in effect, why people like spicy food is because it activates like pain sensors in your body, like you're being burnt, which gives you endorphins. Yeah,
literally. It's like, oh, here's a bit of sympathetic activation. That'll be fun.
Exactly. Like, let's pump some dopamine into your system. So I have to drink like milk when eating Thai food now all the time. And so I tend to find that that's where, when I'm really stressed and when it wants to hit me hard,
it will do it that way.
Exactly. And even now, even though I've been through all of this, because I had digestive problems my whole life, going to school on the bus, school was really hard for me when I was a kid. And I ate papaya enzymes like One, they tasted good, but two, because like I had bottles of them in my backpack from the time that I was a little kid, because it was a natural way of trying to calm my stomach, because I was so nervous going to school.
Yeah.
And so it's always kind of been there. I thought I was lactose intolerant my whole life.
Yeah.
That was the best explanation. But now I understand I just had a high sensitivity to it when I was specifically stressed.
Yeah.
And so that's gone away. So these are the cool things where it's like, I once was allergic to yeast. Now I have no problem with it. I once was lactose intolerant. Now I have no problem with it. It's amazing when these things, like these veils kind of lift.
Yeah. I mean, digestive ones, I think previously were definitely similar for me. And I think what's so interesting there is like how quickly it can come on.
Oh my God.
Right? Like so fast. I had tummy issues growing up all the time, also in my 20s, on and off. And there were like years where I was severely gluten like intolerant. I could not even have the tiniest amount. And I'm very pleased to say that I basically don't have digestive symptoms anymore and haven't had for a while. But I do know that when things have been there for a long time, that can sometimes be the first sight for a lot of people where the system is like, hey, this is where I'm going to tell you that you're stressed.
We all have our hot spots. It could be headaches. It could be that. It could be brain fog.
Yeah.
It could be muscle tension in certain places.
For sure.
Like you people listening right now will probably, if you take a second, know what is that thing that is agitating just enough to be annoying that seems to pop up over and over again.
Yeah.
Like my husband used to always say, he was a tour operator and he would have busloads of people, and he would always complain about his shoulder. And when he was on these trips, and the like tour guide seat at the front that's not so great, and he thought that it was that. I'm like, now after doing this, I'm going, that is 100% mind body, because it's, you're in a stressful situation and then your shoulder goes off. It's not the seat.
Yeah.
It's like people driving to work and then they think it's a problem with their seat of their car or for their
100%.
lumbar spine or whatever. Yeah. It can contribute. Not having good functional support can contribute, but the multiplication factor, like our bodies want to be healthy.
Yeah.
Our bodies want to be in balance. It's all the stuff that we do to them on top of that that makes it worse.
Yeah. Completely agreed.
Yeah. Okay. What have you learned about care and support along the way?
Yeah. So this is where I'm probably going to go slightly more into psychology territory, but I think that the process of going through, well, illness or, you know, symptoms that are kind of debilitating in some respect often teach us that we need to take care of ourselves in a different way than we might have done before. And also that we need to, you know, solicit care and support from others. And, you know, I do see that most people, you know, that I work with probably have been very independent, and it's not super easy for them to ask for care and support. And maybe they even have difficulty receiving it when it's there.
What? Me? Never. Never.
Yeah, I'm literally talking to myself as well while I'm talking about this, but also really desiring it at the same time. And I think that this experience kind of like faces us up with this challenge of like, I need to rely on other human beings. Sometimes there isn't enough support there, but when it is there, can I receive it? Can I be okay with that? And then there are also cases of people who are too much relying on other people's support, who need to find that care for themselves a little bit more. So it's always like a balance of both, I think.
I think I was both.
Yeah, no, same for me.
And so I required like constant attention or constant validation from people outside in all of these places that I felt so insecure on the inside, while at the same time as I couldn't. So that was this weird, this was like a transactional type of feedback. And then the flip side was I couldn't actually receive those compliments fully. I couldn't actually receive care from people fully. So it was like double whammy.
Totally. I mean, I think that's super, super common. And at the same time, I feel like there is a bit of this view that we need to care lots for ourselves. And that means that we need to stop outputting care to other people. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I feel that I was still very caring, even when I was quite debilitated, in ways that felt good and true and authentic to me. But it was when it was kind of overdoing it because of a people pleasing mechanism, or because there was obligation or duty or guilt, that was not helpful. But I do think that, if we want to receive care, there is always that element of reciprocity and kind of, bi-directional flow. So I'm very much now, having gone through this journey, think that, we put good things out into the world, they come back to us. I guess that's a bit of a law of karma, but I think it's an important thing to think about when one's like, if somebody is facing mind body symptoms in some way.
One of the best descriptions I have heard of this is that the things that are often our greatest strengths can often be our greatest weaknesses.
Yeah.
So there are lots of people who are incredibly nice and caring out there, and that is an incredible strength. But then when it runs amok, like when it overtakes you because you're doing it because you need that validation, that is when it becomes very dangerous for your system. So it's about understanding these things and having them exist in balance.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's not part of who you are. It doesn't mean that you're an asshole underneath the surface. It just means that it needs to exist, that you need to kind of like put your mask on first, like on the airplanes, like put your mask on yourself before you can help somebody else.
Yeah. I think we don't necessarily need a fully full cup to also give, but we need something in the cup, right? And I think we've often learned that the hard way also. Yeah. Okay. So question for you. If you could change something about your recovery journey, would you? This
is actually a really hard question, because for people who have been on this journey, something I think that you eventually come to accept, and please don't, to the listeners, I know this is going to sound like the most Zen yoga granola thing that's ever been said, is that like, I don't regret anything that has happened, as painful as it was, because I needed it. Those are unteachable lessons that I had to go through. Like you said, you had to be pushed to the limit yourself before you started to look at things differently. So I wouldn't change anything, but the one factor that I think I would love to be different, which is why I'm here, which is why we're doing this podcast, or at least I'm doing this podcast, is that I wish that I had an understanding of the mind-body connection and more openness to things being caused in my physiology, by my psychology, like by my body and my mind. I didn't have that. And that uncertainty and fear and not knowing what was going on, and going to different doctors and having tests come back normal, but at the same time going through all of this horrible stuff with no one being able to give me answers, that was so scary. And that resulted in me getting so much worse and becoming so fixated on every little symptom in my body. The newest, smallest thing I would freak out over because it's like, oh, here we go again. And I don't have a solution. And now my life is getting worse. So I wish that I had access to information sooner, so that I could have kind of started to go on this journey earlier. It took me like a year and a half of searching and trying and failing to find finally the answers. And then it was another year and a half to 2 years of actually doing the work from there.
Yeah. I have a lot of empathy and compassion for that, honestly. And at the same time, I think, that's not to minimize what you said, but you did get there. And it's really wonderful that you did, and that you were able to do that work. And I think what you're doing now is trying to contribute to like people finding out about this stuff earlier, right? So that they don't have such a long route. And
not being so scared of it.
Yeah.
Like everybody is experiencing this to some extent. We are all experiencing it. It's just, we got to a place where our systems were completely out of balance in context of it. Other people experience it more in a drip feed. So, Okay.
Yeah, I guess I feel like similarly to you, I wish that I had like known earlier, But when I actually look at it, I don't know how that would have happened, because I don't know that my system, and that's maybe different to you, was open to it until things got like a level of bad where I could not ignore it.
Yes, but that's partially, and I mean,
that's partially conditioning.
My ex, who's a sociologist, is going to be is going to be proud of me for saying this, but that has so much to do with the societal setup. The fact that that people aren't talking about it, the fact that it is so taboo, like the word psychosomatic, that word itself is so taboo. People don't want to hear that your symptoms are psychosomatic because they think, no, I am experiencing this. It's not all in my head.
Yeah, for sure.
That's not what psychosomatic actually means, but that's what it's become interpreted to mean, because from a societal perspective, we are so scared of the possibility that, like, we've been so trained into physical experience, physical pain, physical reason. And so that's, I guess, what I mean is I wish that ground was a little softer within myself by having role models, by having people, by having discussions in the open that this is the case. This is a question for both of us. So what feels different about how you relate to your body now compared to when you started?
I think that is an emotional one to answer, because I don't think I particularly liked my body before. And I definitely didn't appreciate it very much. And I think that really started to shift as I was recovering, but already during the period that I had symptoms. So for example, when I had chronic pain, the way my chronic back pain was, I couldn't sit for more than 20 minutes, but I could walk without having a lot of pain. I mean, I could, but I would have a massive pain flare up. So I was just standing and walking all the time. But I could walk, and I could walk long stretches, and it wouldn't really do anything to my back. I remember for the first time, while I was walking, having this immensely deep gratitude to my legs and being oh, I am so grateful to have a body that can walk and that is able to walk. The difficult thing was that I did then lose the ability to walk temporarily after that, which was part of my escalation of symptoms. But as you very well know, because we've been on plenty of walks together, that has shifted. But I guess, that was just a moment of feeling more gratitude. And a lot of the work that I've done around repatterning my nervous system using different modalities has also been about building a better connection to my body. And so part of that is becoming more in tune when there's a symptom and just noticing what are the little signs, or where is my body saying something and I need to kind of soothe a little bit, oh no, I don't need to be fearful about this, or a tiny bit of anxiety that I feel in my chest, or we were talking about being stressed and overwhelmed, this feeling of maybe starting to feel a tiny bit foggy. Oh, okay. I need to maybe rest. So it's been this process of becoming more in tune with my needs and really hearing my body's signals before they escalate to this huge thing, they had to before, to get my attention essentially, and just feeling more grateful, appreciative, and connected to it. That doesn't mean I don't have days sometimes where I'm ugh, why don't I have more energy for this task, or why am I not at this target with exercise yet? But I would say it's much improved, and that has been a really wonderful blessing of this journey. How's it been for you?
Similar in ways, but I would say that the process of basically, I was very fit and active beforehand, not as a kid, but as an adult. I learned to use fitness kind of as a way to manage my stress.
Sure.
But then I doubled down on that really hard, and I was working out so much, and so much of that was also tied to my insecurities about the way I looked.
Yeah.
I then had this kind of total fuck you that happened from my body, where it basically eventually said stop putting all of this in me. So I then lost the ability to actually work out, which was so tied and intertwined into this
Yeah.
picture that I had of myself being like fit and successful and all of these things. And so then I became so anxious because I lost that. So the gratitude, like you're saying, when you get access to being able to move again,
Yeah.
is so incredibly nice. But then kind of the step beyond that for me, this point of that we kind of talked about before, of you come to this work to heal, but then it opens up so much more beyond that eventually, is that I realized like how badly I had body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
And when I looked
Same.
at myself in the mirror, I couldn't actually, I look at photos of myself from the past and go like, how did I not realize like the shape that I was in? And all I could see what was wrong with me.
I so deeply relate to that. That's so eerie because I don't think we've actually spoken about this before.
No.
But I've had the exact same.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a dissonance. I'm like, I remember how I used to look at those things and how you would feel. And you're like, whoa, that's two completely different things.
And like being obsessed with being in good shape, then I always had food was always a thing for me growing up. I would like sneak food in the back. I basically was bullied at school and I felt bad. And so then I would go and eat my feelings.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of had this big change point that happened when I was in university, that I started to work out. And I found that, I felt like I had power in this now because I was in good shape. But I had a very unhealthy relationship with food still, because the only way that I could be in good shape was to like work out a ton to make up for how much I would binge eat here and there, or to be so strict with my calorie intake that I had to measure all of my macros, which is just not good for anybody psychologically. I also realized like I couldn't even feel full.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what it felt to be full. I understood what it felt to be stuffed. And I understood logically when I had had enough food and I didn't need to eat more, but I wasn't actually satiated because I was so out of connection with the experience of my stomach.
That's a really nuanced reflection, like this idea that you had some sense of different cues that are related to hunger, but it was like two extremes and you never found this like middle for yourself. And I'm glad that you did eventually find it.
At 37.
But I do think that it's important here to note that, like, disordered eating or eating disorders, they are not the focus of this podcast, but they are very much connected to mind-body symptoms often. And, I have worked with many, 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 many clients who have had a history around disordered eating. And it isn't always because of dysmorphia, but for sure, this connection to like body image, I think is one that can come more strongly to the fore with food, but also, with the effects and impacts of chronic symptoms on your physique or your actual capacity for, say, exercise or other kind of tasks of daily living. So, I think that recovery is really this process of cultivating kind of a better relationship with oneself and finding a bit more, maybe not full, but a little bit more acceptance of one's body, even when it is struggling.
Totally.
So tell me a little bit, why do you think it's important for people to talk about mind-body symptoms?
Well, I think I spoke about it a little bit before already. I think the biggest point is that right now we all experience this. It's just part of who we are as human beings. Like our nervous system is animalistic. We are 10-to-1 ratio in terms of actually looking at evolutionary biology. We're like 10 parts animal. Our entire nervous system, how it functions, how all of our organs function, all of that stuff is animalistic. And we operate solely in the place of the thinking brain on a day-to-day basis. That's what our entire society is based around. But that is like the most recent evolution of how we function. And this is one of the biggest things that was interesting for me to learn through this process. And so we need to talk about mind-body symptoms because we are basically ignoring 90% of how we are built if we don't. And there's so much stigma in it at the moment. There's so much fear to be open about this being the case. And as I started to become more open, especially working in the world of tech, startups, scale ups, like fast paced environments, it's so funny. So many people are struggling with the same things, but they're not talking about them.
Yeah.
And so many of my colleagues or people in my network, as I said that I was going to do this podcast, said, "Oh, I'm going to listen because they're struggling with this too."
Yeah.
So like people who burn hot, burn fast, who are motivated, driven, are far more likely to be in the circumstance that they're actually experiencing this.
Yes.
But we societally are comfortable with the addiction to work, the addiction to stress, the addiction to overachieving because it seems productive in the world.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not to say you can't be driven, you can't be a high achiever, but you can do that with a sense of balance and boundaries. So that's why I think it's very important to talk about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, people, when you start talking about these things more openly, will often be able to resonate and they start to connect dots for themselves, either with their own symptoms or, a loved one or someone that they're close to. It does impact everyone, and some people to higher degrees, other people to lesser degrees. But the more that we can talk about it and normalize it, the more we can also, start to normalize also undoing some of these conditioned patterns, which are not helpful to lots of people.
Yep. Okay, this is for you. What still bothers you about how people blame themselves for their symptoms?
Well, honestly, it ties in a lot with what you're saying. I think that even as people start to realize that maybe working, for me, it was like 60 hours a week minimum, like for my entire 20s, to kind of like normalize that maybe isn't what your body needs or wants. Even as they start to do that and start to realize that, there is still such deep conditioning around productivity and not being able to keep up, perhaps, or this feeling of not being able to keep up, either because you're in recovery or you've come to terms with the fact that those patterns just aren't good for you, full stop, maybe even after you've lost your chronic symptoms. But I also think that there's a really big way in which it shows up in the recovery and healing process itself, which is where people will blame themselves for not making progress fast enough. And my experience is that more often traps people into a state of of lack of motivation and lack of a sort of flow of energy, because they are feeling quite shut down by that shame and guilt. And I don't think it's particularly helpful.
No.
So I do think that the wellness industry also has a bit of a part to play in this. The fact that there is more information that is accessible around the nervous system is wonderful. And I, for one, and I know you for sure have as well, and probably many of our listeners, if not all, have profited from nervous system programs. But I think that people can get very bogged down in when a certain practice doesn't work for them in the way that it's intended, or they just don't gel with it. And I'm always a fan of giving people more room, more flexibility to just explore and see what sticks for them. And to also know that when you look at how long it took for symptoms to gain the momentum where you really had to do something about it, it's going to take time sometimes to unwind. You are not a machine. You are a human being with a body. Like you said, 9 parts animal. And we've also got to sometimes just accept that that's going to be a little bit non-linear and not conforming as fast as possible to some kind of illusory standard of what that looks like.
Yeah.
So and especially if people don't have, as much financial security and aren't able to get the supports, and they're having to DIY things more, give yourself grace for, some things that maybe you can't control about your environment and the way that can interact with your recovery and healing.
Yeah. with the wellness industry thing. I mean, I get so many ads for different things, of course, following different people in the space. And it's the latest ones are like, oh, all of your problems are caused by your vagus nerve. Do this vagus nerve reset.
Totally.
Or your HRV is the problem. You need to do this, like your heart rate variability, which, by the way, vagus nerve and heart rate variability, HRV is one of the best KPIs.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's actually one of the best numbers that we have to show how we're doing with this. Yeah. It is relevant, but it isn't the problem.
Yeah, 100%.
And your vagus nerve isn't the problem. Your vagus nerve is like a key piece for how your system interconnects, how it runs automatically. But, and yes, there can be stuff that's not working great with it.
Yeah.
And if you find helpful things in those programs, or if you find helpful things in those places, that's totally fine. But think of them as tools in a toolbox, not the solution.
Yeah. And I think, there is a lot of like lifestyle selling and some unethical marketing that goes on in terms of like painting a very idealized picture. And so most people's stories do look messier than that. And, that's just real. That doesn't mean that recovery isn't possible. Like, we literally wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't. Yeah. But yeah, I think people need to give themselves grace a little bit more.
Cool.
Okay.
What about the world today makes it harder to recover?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of hard to pick where to start, because I think that, globally we're facing a lot of political instability, colonial violence. People are affected by the cost of living everywhere. Access to care is an issue. And also technologically, we are bombarded with information and requests at all times. And I think that everything is very fast paced, as well as being, us living in a time that is changing very rapidly in ways that we do not fully understand yet. And there's probably a lot more change coming. So I think with that, it can be incredibly difficult to find, a sense of center and like a felt sense of stability, which is really something that we do need to be able to find enough of to really address our mind-body symptoms. And I do think that it is possible, even as everything is going on, to find enough of that. But I do think that it is at times very difficult. And for some people, especially people who are more marginalized, there will be more issues around that. And so I guess this comes like back to the kind of shame and blame question. I do think that we need to sort of acknowledge that our world, the way it exists right now, is very much disconnected from how our nervous system has actually evolved to integrate information and process things.
Like the 9 to 1 thing again.
Yeah.
Like we grew up in the jungle. Yeah. That's what our nervous system is designed to exist in.
Look at trees.
Yeah. In like nature, in the jungle. And we are so not operating in that. I agree on all fronts there. And I think working in tech, it's hard because, God, my perspective of this has changed so much. When I was younger, I so badly wanted to be like this huge tech entrepreneur that had my own startup that was super successful and all of these things. And now I look at these companies, these founders, these things, these like places and institutions that I looked up to. And I am so disappointed and scared about how they have had this huge influence on our systems becoming dysfunctional.
Oh, like, absolutely.
Everything, because it was tailored to grab our attention as much as possible. All of these apps that we use on a daily basis are designed to basically
hijack our brains, like worse than drugs in some circumstances, as bad as sugar and other things. Like scrolling is the new smoking, is the types of things absolutely.
that and so, and they are completely designed to hold our attention. And so I believe that, but we have to exist with them. We have to live with them, because if we're pragmatic, we can't just all peace out and go and live on a commune in the middle of a forest.
I mean, I would love that, but
I might prefer like a private Thai island or something that's a little warmer, but there you go. But it's just not feasible. We have to exist in this world with everybody around us. So the odds are stacked against you from the moment that you wake up and pull, like the first time that you look at your phone in the day, let alone everything, all the instability that's going on that we then have access to at rapid speed with constant notifications to understand just how bad things are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. What's one thing you'd like people to be more curious about instead of afraid of?
Fear.
Huh.
So one of the things that people very often don't know is that they will have a fear of fear, because fear can become this all-consuming experience, both somatically, so in the body, and cognitively. And a lot of the time when we contact fear, we get closer to the experience of fear. We get very scared that it will consume us, that we will just be the fear, and we become very enmeshed with it. We become, really molten into the fear. There's no separation from it. And one of the things that I think is really, really useful to cultivate is this idea of a kind of curious witness or observer. And this is true not just for fear, but also for symptoms, for other parts of your emotional experience as they relate to mind-body symptoms. But with fear, I think that when we can start to become curious about how it shows up, it can tell us a lot about what does make us feel safe and what we need to feel safe, and just about our needs in general. So if we can kind of start to contact it a little bit more and become that kind of compassionate, curious witness to fear, we can lose some of that fear of fear. We can actually just see fear as an experience that humans have, because like you say, we have these evolutionary ancient parts of our brain which give us the experience of fear that have a purpose. And often with that also comes, a reduction in people's fear in everyday situations. And it's very, very easy for fear to become a big problem in a society like we've just described.
Yeah.
But also when you have symptoms, because symptoms are literally an alarm in your body, especially pain, right? As there is something wrong here. And it takes a bit of work to go against that kind of, initial impulse to be super afraid of it. But if we can try and just soften that a couple of percent, I feel like a lot of things can shift, both on a mental and physical level.
I definitely had that.
What was your experience of that?
With fearing fear?
Yeah.
I couldn't even feel fear.
Okay. Wow.
I didn't realize it, but I couldn't feel fear because I just kind of like squashed it down. I would eat.
Yeah.
If I was
There you
scared,
go.
I would eat
Yeah.
instead. And and fear is mostly felt in the stomach area, so for me, that was one of the most interesting things that was connected to, I believe, no one can go dot A, dot B, same thing.
Yeah.
We're beyond that in this world. But I believe that a huge part of why I couldn't feel full was because I had pushed away fear.
Wow.
Because that exact place it's in your stomach. You feel.
I actually feel it in my chest. But
Oh.
people do map fear to the stomach and chest a lot. And also for some people, it could be somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that there are big overlaps there and where we feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So, question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, or what do you believe are some of the key ingredients in recovery and healing?
Patience. I'd say that's number one. I was so focused, and it's really, really hard because when you're in these crappy places, I was just talking with a friend of mine today who is experiencing his own mind body stuff right now, struggling to accept it as mind body. also, like me, that same loop of needing the physical, like needing exercise as an outlet. And it's this 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so I often tell people that I'm friends of mine that are going through this now, expect that this is going to happen a number of times. Don't expect that this is the last time that this symptom is going to pop up. It'll get better and then it'll get worse, and then it'll get better and then it'll get worse until it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So patience is one of those things.
Completely agree.
Mindfulness.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That is probably the number one apart from patience. And I will leave it at those two but with mindfulness, I didn't realize how much the voice inside my head was hurting me and it wasn't until I developed an understanding and took time.
Yeah.
Like slowed things down, didn't distract myself with podcasts and music and things like that all the time. Wasn't just kind of numbing myself through always doing something. And then I could finally start to hear the voice in my head. And from my experience, at least, like you'd have a symptom pop up and then you wouldn't know what would happen. And once you learn to play this like tape track that's going on in your head back, this recording, and then think, what did I just think? It's amazing how much the thoughts that we have in our head can so directly relate to my heart rate going up or my blood pressure rising. Or this is also part of that 9-to-1 thing that we have developed in such a way, and our prefrontal cortex, like our thinking brain, is able through just our thinking to simulate into our animalistic self that we are in danger, that we are being chased by a bear,
Or a tiger.
or a tiger or a cheetah or a lion or whatever it is. But then we make it so much worse because we don't actually respond the way that we're supposed to with all the chemicals that are pumping into our body of like running away and having strength or doing whatever and being alert. We then stay still. We then sit in place. And then all of that cortisol, all of that stuff is running through us. And then we're just stuck.
Yeah, totally.
And then we get anxiety. And so, like patience, mindfulness, and then the right information, access to the right information, access to be able to understand how this works and interconnects so that you can build your toolkit for yourself. So that you can find what works for you. And that you can kind of go on that journey yourself.
I love that. The only thing I would maybe add into the mix, but it kind of fits with one of your points, is compassion. I think that the mindfulness piece, you heard me agree. I think that we can do a lot of practices to repattern our nervous system, but at the end of the day, if we keep repeating the same patterns in our everyday life without any awareness in our relationships, in how we, deal with our job situations, without that mindful awareness, we aren't actually able to translate those changes as well. And I feel that mindfulness and that presence and awareness is so fundamental to being able to enact change. But for me, I think compassion needs to be somewhat a part of that witnessing, especially when we start to witness things that are more challenging, that do feel more difficult. There can be a tendency to self-blame or to be quite critical and to just want to fix something, which is just fear physiology all over again. So compassion adds a kind of a safety signal to that witnessing that I think is really important.
Okay, there's a lot of talk about personal qualities that can support recovery. What's the most underrated one?
Oh, so this one's interesting, but I'm going to say, and I will explain it in a minute, a high internal locus of control.
What does that mean?
Exactly. So a locus of control is like a psychology term, which basically explains where you place kind of agency and where do you think change is actually happening. So you can have a high external locus of control, which means that everything is down to the circumstances and you don't have that much control over them. And that's what dictates everything. And then there's the internal locus of control. And if you have a high internal locus of control, you think that you are able to change a lot. And what studies show is that having a high internal locus of control has a massive impact on both your mental and physical health, because you are more likely to see yourself as an agent of change, and you're more likely to be able to take, to some degree, also responsibility for what you can control.
Like there's something I can do about this.
Yeah, you can enact positive change. And, I will say that probably people, come into the world with a tendency towards one or the other, and their life circumstances will obviously, and their experiences will obviously also have a big impact on that. But it is also changeable. And I think that when people start to move towards having a higher internal locus of control, it's a lot about seeing where they do have an impact on their life, their health, and really starting to celebrate that, to build that self-confidence and to build up, this kind of idea that you can actually change something about your situation.
So it's like patience, mindfulness, those allow you to be like, it's going to take time. That's okay.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, willingness to see what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Compassion, be kind to yourself. Like this is a journey. You're not going to have all the answers right away. And then the perspective that I can do something about it though.
Yeah.
It might not be immediate. It might take some time. But I can do something about it.
Also, I totally think that like having a super high internal locus of control can be a little bit delulu, like it doesn't need to be fully real either. Like there are probably biases in either direction. Like I can do nothing about this, or like I can do lots about this.
I am Thanos.
Yeah. But it's probably better to be erring towards that part, because that is where you actually have some capacity for change. And that seems to be good enough to improve your health. So that is good news. And if you feel like you don't have a particularly high one, know that the way that I just described is very much a path forward for building up some more resilience.
All these things can be built. That's the cool thing. Is that I was not patient. I sucked at mindfulness.
I can confirm the former a little bit.
Oh, really? Really? You saw that?
Sometimes.
But it's practice.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it's uncomfortable, but it's practice. And it's doing meditations or activities each day, and you get a little bit better.
Yeah.
Just like step by step.
Totally. I think when people get overwhelmed, I'm just always saying, just take one little step at a time, try and not jump forward too much, and come back to like what you can do right now.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Question for you.
Yes.
Do you have a message for people who are currently in the thick of escalating or chronic symptoms?
You are not alone.
Oh, I really felt that. Yeah.
You are not alone. I've been there. Atena's been there. There are many other people who are in the midst of this or have gone through it. There are answers. There are solutions. It is not rocket science. It is not like out in the ether somewhere. That it takes work. It takes awareness. It takes all the things we've talked about so far, but you are not alone, and there is a path through.
Beautiful. I have nothing to add to that.
Okay. Question to you. If there's one bit of advice you could give to someone who's figuring out their recovery, what would it be?
Yeah, it's actually quite difficult to distill it to just one thing, but I'm gonna impart something that I feel is not maybe spoken about enough, which is that when you're trying to decode, especially on a like psycho-emotional level, what has led to escalating or chronic symptoms, it's very informative to look at what was happening and how you were feeling and how your nervous system was feeling at the time that you became more unwell, or your symptoms started to pick up some kind of speed or some kind of intensity that wasn't there before. Like escalating.
So like what was going on in your life at the tipping point?
Essentially, yes. What was going on, and also what effect would that have had on how you feel and also your sense of safety? Yeah. And that can be different things for different people. but very often it is relational or a sense of overwhelm or loneliness or this is too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes all of those things,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
But I think that for each person, there will be some clues there of things that might need addressing or will need addressing on a path of recovery, where you can find the antidote to those things and to those feelings. That if you were feeling like you were carrying too much on your own, there can be an antidote to that feeling. If you feel like things are too much and you can't handle it, there are ways to find an antidote to that as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, change in circumstances built through decisions that you make, as well as doing that kind of deep inner work and supporting your nervous system to start changing its alarm, right? Which can be through neuroscience education or whichever mind-body modality you resonate with. I think there is more than one way to do this type of work. But yeah, I think sometimes we can come back to that initial time and look at it through that lens, and it can be really fruitful.
All right. That's all for today. We hope that we helped you understand this weird world of mind-body symptoms a little bit better through our own personal stories, and maybe feel a little less weird about the symptoms you might be experiencing yourselves.
And remember, we're here to answer your questions. So you can check out our Instagram at Your Body Has Opinions, all one word, and you'll find the link there to submit your questions. See you in 2 weeks.